At almost every airport security checkpoint in the world, the same thing happens. Power banks go in the carry-on, not the checked bag. Most people follow the rule without thinking about it. A few get stopped, confused, and have to pull their power bank out of their luggage at the last minute. And almost nobody knows the actual reason. The common assumption is that power banks are just dangerous, a fire hazard, something that needs to be controlled. But that is not quite right. Because the same power bank that cannot go in your checked bag is sitting in your laptop, your phone, and your carry-on, all of which are completely allowed. The rule is not about the battery, it is about where the battery goes. To understand why location matters, you need to understand what happens when a lithium-ion battery fails. Under the right conditions, physical damage, overcharging, manufacturing defects, or heat, a lithium-ion cell can enter what engineers call thermal runaway. The cell overheats, the chemistry becomes unstable. It releases flammable gas and heat. That heat triggers the cell next to it, which triggers the next one, which triggers the next. In a large power bank with dozens of cells, this chain reaction can escalate from a warm battery to a fire in seconds. It is not a slow process, and once it starts, it is very difficult to stop. Now, here is the part most people miss. That exact same process can happen in a battery in the cabin. It has happened. Flight attendants have extinguished burning power banks mid-flight with fire suppression equipment. Passengers have thrown burning devices into safety bags. It is dangerous, but it is manageable because someone can see it. Put that same battery in the cargo hold and everything changes. The cargo hold of a commercial aircraft is pressurized, temperature-controlled, and completely unmonitored during flight. There are no flight attendants down there, no fire extinguishers someone can grab, no way to see a small fire before it becomes a large one. Cargo hold fire suppression systems exist, but they are designed for specific fire types and have limits. A lithium-ion thermal runaway burns differently from a standard fire. It generates its own oxygen. Suppression agents slow it, but do not always stop it. Several aviation incidents have been linked to lithium battery fires in cargo. The FAA and IATA analyzed the risk and arrived at the same conclusion. A battery fire in a cabin is a manageable emergency. A battery fire in the cargo hold, discovered late, is a different category of problem entirely. So the rule was written around visibility, not danger. That is why the regulation does not say power banks are forbidden on planes. It says they must be in the cabin, with you, where someone can see them, where someone can act. The battery is the same. The chemistry is the same. The risk is the same. The only thing the rule changes is whether a fire starts somewhere it can be found in 30 seconds or somewhere it might not be found for 30 minutes. That is not a ban on power banks. That is a rule about where fires are allowed to happen. If you want more small things with big reasons, subscribe.